Hi, everybody. Tina Brock, Producing Artistic Director here at the Idiopathic Radiculopathy Consortium in Philadelphia. I'm your host for Into the Absurd, a virtually existential dinner conversation. I do hope you'll join us the next 50 minutes. Sit back and relax as we explore the lives, the hearts, the minds, and the spirits of creators in Philadelphia region and around the world. And good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Tina Brock here at the Idiopathic Radiculopathy Consortium in Philadelphia, and I've jammed myself into a closet today with a bunch of books. Stories, storytelling, memoir, that's going to be the subject on today's show with our guest, Tanesha Ford. And just a big shout out and thank you to everybody who's joined us here in Zoom and on Facebook Live. And for all of you for whom podcasts are your thing, you can now find us on iTunes and Spotify and iHeart at Into the Absurd with Tina Brock. So check out past episodes. We've been going since June, and very, very thankful to you that you have been here with us to make Into the Absurd possible. On today's show, we'll be talking with friend and colleague Tanesha Ford. Tanesha is the Marketing Communications Director at First Person Arts. She is also a member of Tongue and Groove Spontaneous Theater. And Tanesha and I got to know each other many, many years ago as actors over at the Triangle Theater. And I've wanted to have her on for a long time. So we're going to do that now. Let's bring Tanesha to the table. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
I'm so glad. What, can I see you? Absolutely. Yeah. You're looking quite vibrant and very, very Tanesha today.
I'm
very bright and very bold. And that is what I think of when I think of you, Tanesha. So we'll definitely get to some of the great work that First Person is going to be doing in the very near future. But I want to go back and traverse the journey to your working with First Person Arts as a performer, we got to know each other many years ago as comrades over at the Triangle Theater. And I want to talk about storytelling and how that integrates into your life. But I guess the question that's sitting for me, the first one is, when you were young, tell me about your youth and if storytelling and performance was a part of Tanesha as a kid.
Yeah. Yes. And I was military dependent because I don't subscribe to the idea of brats. Yes. But my dad was in the Army. And so we traveled a lot. Right. So I was born in Colorado. Then we moved to Germany. We lived there for 4 years, I think it was, then moved to Fort Dix and there for 3 years, then moved to Turkey and was there for 3 or 4 years. And then my dad retired out in Jersey. So, there was a lot of what I like to call the saffron seasoning of my life, right? So it was more than salt and pepper that informed a lot of who I started to kind of coalesce into being. And then, when during this time, there was always the melodramatic, I want to be seeing Ham, ness of the child. Mm-hmm. And it was just I always just wanted to be an actor, right? Because I glommed onto various characters on TV, which of course, in the early 80s, that's what we all did, sit in front of the TV with the remote control, pushing the buttons, to be these people on TV. And I wanted to be Wonder Woman. And actually, I wrote a one-woman show called All of Me that I've done here in Philly and then I've done in New York, where I feature little Tanesha wanting to be Wonder Woman. And I'd pray every night, dear Lord, make me Wonder Woman. I'd spin, and vomit because that wasn't going to happen. And then finally they were like, she's an actor. And I'm like, oh, then I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to play Wonder Woman. See, this is easy. We can do this. And so, I've just always kind of wanted to tell these people's stories and be these people. I really wanted to be these people, for however finite amount of time.
That was born out of some sort of Was there a loneliness of sorts that came from traveling from place to place to place? As a kid, was that some of it?
I wouldn't say that, because I became super chameleon. I became super adaptable. Traveling, because we move every 3-4 years. And so you get in, you make your friends real quick, and then you have your friends, because in 3 years you're going. And then some of those friends I kept and for many years later. And some friends they were a season. So I don't know that it came from loneliness. I think it just came from a really vivid imagination, right? From like a super fertile kind of like, I want to do that. I want to be that. I want that. And
was that like because you could hold people's attention, or was it the strength and the power that comes from just being able to be a different person?
I think maybe a little about both. I mean, it took me a long time to, and when I say a long time, minding that I started wanting to be an actor from Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, so that's a long time ago, and a young person, but there was a combination of like just wanting to be seen and a ham, but then there was also the idea of being whatever I wanted to be, like that was really kind of magical, right? That was like, alluring and magical. And I don't know that at younger ages that was as clear as it was when I got older, but a little bit of ham and a little bit of escapism, maybe.
And so you went to school in Florida. You went to university in Florida.
I went to Florida A&M University, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. It's an HBCU in Tallahassee, Florida, and it's on the highest of 7 hills of Florida. And our mascot was the Rattlers, and super Rattler pride. Do I have
like Rattler, snake Rattler?
Snakes. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't think I've ever known a Rattler.
Hey, some people do dragons, but we did Rattlers.
Were there a lot of them there?
Rattlesnakes? I don't know. I do not know how that mascot came to be. And probably if anybody from FAMU is watching, it probably cussing me. If you're from FAMU watching, tell me if you know about the Rattlers. But I don't know. Yeah.
And so you were in the theater program there?
Yes. Essential theater, where, it's funny when I was older and I had an agent here in Philly, and I was trying to get on The Wire, and I was like, I need to get on The Wire. Like every Black actor in Philadelphia has been on The Wire. Like, why can't I get on? Well, this is certain people who've gone on The Wire, been on the consortium, they've been the conservatories, and, they've done like the Triangle Theater and Florida A&M University. And I was like, I just have that Daniel Sunjata, who won a Tony, Florida A&M, Anika Noni Rose won a Tony, Florida A&M. Please, Meshach Taylor, Florida A&M. Takia Kima Crystal from Living Color, Florida A&M. Please don't and get me an audition.
Did you?
Sorry, I got in my feelings just now.
That's right. Did you? I mean, did you?
I did. I got an audition and I got on The Wire. Florida A&M.
You said when you were on the set, Florida A&M, Florida A&M. Get out of my way. I guess
Florida A&M.
Well, good for you. So, like, I don't know. I have this urge to ask you the question. Like, what was your favorite stage experience when you were in school? I have a feeling this is going to be a great story. She's like write a Wonder Woman musical.
No, well, I'll tell you, my favorite role, 2 favorite roles, but the one that first came to mind was we did an adaptation of Hamlet. And instead of Denmark, we were in South Carolina, maybe. And instead of 2 kingdoms, it was a seminary school, and it was during the Civil Rights Movement. And instead of Marcellus, I was Mother Marcellus of the church. Yes, baby. Yes. And so, you know, the language stayed the same. It's just the space. And it was really, and actually Daniel Sunjata was in this production as well. I just named dropped 3, 4, 5 times. I've become that girl. I've become her.
Right.
But it was really a powerful experience to like to have such like the Black diaspora kind of overlaid onto Shakespeare, and to like love Shakespeare as something that I could feel like I could own, right? Like I could feel like it's, you know, a lot of times, like if I've done Shakespeare straight, right? Like straight Shakespeare. And I've always felt like a visitor in a foreign country, right? Maybe like an expat at best. You know, like I've got in, but when we did this rendition, I was like, oh no, I'm home. I'm home. I had a different relationship with it. And it was pretty much by far my favorite experience, on that at school.
Did you know coming out of school that you wanted to work? I mean, that was the direction you were going, was theater, right? You wanted to be on the stage. Mm-hmm. How long after you got out then was it that we crossed paths over at the Triangle here in Philadelphia?
I
mean,
I would say maybe. I think there was a period after school when I got lost in working. When I say I got mm-hmm. lost, I got lost from acting. Because I was taking student loans. Oh my God, I have to pay these bills, and I'm a grown person now, and I rent, you know, and I just kind of got lost from it. And I was, you know, traveling 90% of the time and fixed assets and insurance, so not artistic. And that was the dark time. Like, you know, we all have a dark time as we grow and develop. That was my dark time. One of them, but, so I want to say that was, trying not to use numbers out loud, maybe 5 years after graduation that I found Triangle Theater and George DiCenzo. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so just to sort of lay context to that for everybody, it was a theater over in Northern Liberties, right? North Lawrence Street that Jane Stojek started with George. And it was we were talking about this before the show, a very fertile and just unusual and important, I think, for all of us in our development and the way that we got to know each other and sort of the risks that we could take and what we could try. And we were waxing a little poetic about wanting to have that creative freedom again, or getting back to the place where we could write and do those things. What do you think it was about that time and space that, you know, I don't know, resulted in such a unique partnership between people?
I've thought about this often, and I don't really, I can't. I know. So how about this? I'll speak for me, because I don't know. I can't speak to the other kind of what people were vibing. But for me, in that time, there was a sense of we were all in this together. It almost had like a 70, you know, like there was that theater movement, mm-hmm. a 70s kind of movement feel, where we would spend time, we would go to class on Saturdays, and George would ring us over he was a brutal teacher, brutally honest. I loved it. Blew no smoke at all. And we would like, okay. And we would go back and we would work our stuff. And I'd call you up, Tina, and say, hey, Tina, I want to do a monologue, and la, 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 la. And, or I'm writing something, Tina. Could you read this in class next week? And, you know, and there was a sense of community where we supported each other come hell or high water in our artistic endeavors, because we wanted each of us to be better, get stronger. And we were there for it. We were all, you know, I buy in, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that sort of sense of safety and the place that created made it possible for people to take big risks, to grow in a big way, and to dwell in what did or didn't work. I mean, thinking back on, we were talking about this before the show, but thinking back on some of the left hooks that would come from George out in the office, is just like, I don't care about your whatever, get on with it, and get on with it, figure it out, and then put it up on the stage, and just, as you say, just not playing at all with any of the nonsense.
And, I'm not really, when I first started, he was a strange white guy who was like, what did he just, what happened? So when I was very kind of resistant to him. But I saw work. I saw good work on the stage. And I saw from his critique, work get better immediately. And I was like, well, as long as he doesn't come at me out his mouth some kind of crazy way, we be all right. And I think he kind of, and that was, he was good at that. He could see who he could hit hard immediately, and he could see who he needed to get trust to be able to hit hard. He knew he had to earn my trust before I would allow him to swing. Do you know what I mean? To swing, to be like, because I knew once I got to know him, and then he would push, because he pushed me many a time. But it wasn't until after, like, I had some trust involved. And again, that goes back to why we were so creative, because we've earned each other's trust.
And there was this, wasn't there a sense of, and Bob's listening, Bob and Erica and thank you, Bob and Erica, for running the show today. But I'm thinking, Bob was there at the time that you were there. And just, there was almost this, like, this, it's like making up new, just pushing your creativity to the limit to see, because you knew you could really try things, except they had to be baked before you brought them in. That was also the thing I remember, that there was just not a lot of tolerance for, hey, like, really? No, don't waste my time. Let's move on, And I just think, because
he kicked people out. He was like, you are effing around, get out, just get out, leave.
Yeah.
He came from the old school, from like New York Actors Studio, like old school, where, I don't know, people would just be like cussing and, throwing shoes at
throwing things, right?
And
there was some of that.
He adapted to the times, but he did. He'll kick out, get out, just get out. You came in half-assed, half-baked, just get out, don't waste my time. And, people got out because they knew that they came in half-baked, and came back, and they were like, well done. Stick a fork in them.
Have you thought about resurrecting that idea or that group or that?
I have, I'll say this. I did not start writing until I was in George's class, and I did not have any belief in myself at all about in my ability to write. And I was talking to him, and he was like, "You should write it." And I was like, "Oh no, I don't write. I don't do that." And he was like, "Yes, you can. I can hear by the way you talk that you're a writer. Write it." And I was like, and it stuck with me, and I started to write. And then I ended up writing a one-woman show. I ended up writing a play or two plays. And I don't churn them out because I'm not disciplined. But now these days, I have another play in my head, but I don't have that same kind of soup around me, that kinetic energy around me that gave me that extra thing. So yes, I've been thinking about, I wonder if we could do like a Zoom and be like, hey guys, Triangle Theater, alumni, let's have a writer's room or something.
I would so be all on board for that, because exactly what you said, the soup, it's the soup, right? Of this desire to want to bring a dish to the table every week. And even if that dish was like the clunker of the week or whatever, which for me, definitely along the way, there was a lot of that, but it somehow made it really okay to fail.
Yeah.
As long as it was baked when you brought it in, as long as it wasn't raw.
And baked doesn't mean perfect. Because if it was perfect, then why are you in class? But it was
Right.
the best it could be at that point, right? At the where you were. And you know, and you can always tell when you're like, yeah, you I know you can do better. Nah, take that.
Mhm.
Be gone.
Yeah,
You
there was
know?
a certain excitement in the room about what was going to happen. Almost the same way it is when you go to the theater. It's like, what are we going to see tonight? What's going to be? Yeah, it
You
had a
working? You're not working. Oh, what you doing? You working? Oh, no, don't tell me. I want to see. You working? Yeah, I'm working. I'm doing something new. Really? Did you write it? Oh, there was just that, you know?
oh yeah. Yeah, and I just feel like that's such an integral part of like not only community, but just like the community of yourself as a creative artist and why you develop such great alliances that kind of like hold on and last because it is like this favorite group of people that really are responsible in a very big way for your development and you wonder like I don't think a lot of things certainly personally for me wouldn't have happened without that group of people. Absolutely would not have happened.
I got to see the beginnings of the absurdist development of Tina Brock way back in the day.
Oh, wait, so we would bring stuff in. Bob and I would bring stuff in and do scenes and whatnot. And George would be like, I was saying this before the show. He's like, really? Didn't anybody tell you the 60s, the absurdist, it's a done thing. It's a gone thing, you know? And I think today and I think about George and I'm like, George, oh, Bob's here.
Bob ran.
Bob, you're on. But I do think like what would, yeah, just George, it's all one big absurdist soup, as you said before.
I mean, after 4 years of what we had, you can't deny the validity of absurdity and tantalizing the masses. Right,
exactly. Bob, welcome. I was just getting ready to, I'm glad you're here. Do you want to chime in about triangle related, anything triangle related?
Oh gosh. It was, wow. It was just a great time, really. Just in Philly theater, at least as where we're concerned. Yeah, it was really fertile, I think, in a lot of ways. It's just such a different world now, really. I'm just really glad that I was a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Are you leaving? Okay.
Well, I don't have to.
Well, we're going to move on to Tongue and Groove, but you can stay if you want.
No, I will acquiesce.
Thanks for stopping in.
I love your face, Bob.
Oh.
What was I going to... I lost my train of thought there. Well, I'll get back to it. I want to go to Tongue and Groove because I want to talk about Tongue and Groove spontaneous theater that you've been a part of that Bobby Block runs, right? And I think this idea of casting. Let you explain, Tanesha, the premise for people that most people do, but in case you're not familiar with Tongue and Groove, give them the layout of what this involves.
So Tongue and Groove Spontaneous Theater Company, and it is improvisational theater that is reality based, right? It's serial comic, so it's not the it's not set up joke. It's reality based, and what we built our format on was connecting with each other, and so every rehearsal and every day before performance, we would do a check-in where we would just kind of unpack a little bit of what's happening in our day. So I could be like, yeah, my dog threw up all over my bed and I was about to take a nap because I was coming to the show tonight and I couldn't take my nap because my dog just puked all over my bed. And that may be what I'm carrying into the moment. Come to showtime, that may be something that, there may be an offer, an anonymous offer from the audiences. So it's not like we know the audiences can anonymously put in a card based on a question, a secret that you've had or something that you've happened in bed or whatever. And so I could pull a card and it could be like, I fell in love for the first time in bed, let's just say. And I could do a scene, and the fact, I could be like mentioning a dog vomiting in my bed, like we pull from our lives. And that was like the thing that made us so and I hate to use the word connected, but that's really, that's what tongue and groove means, seamlessly connected. That's what made us so connected, was like we would integrate both our stuff and the audience's offerings into this theme and then just be present. Techniques are used, of course, but the core of it was being present and listening. Listening, not like, listening to the words that are being said, but listening to what the heart or sentiment is being said. Does that make sense? I don't know if that even makes...
Yeah. So I
don't know if Bobby would describe it that way, but that was like the way I kind of internalized it and executed.
Yeah. So each week, and I'm sure it depends on what kind of a program you're doing, but people give prompts from the audience and you guys follow through on them in a longer form storytelling that's improvisational. So do you feel like your ability to tell stories, to write stories, to have done monologues and written plays and things that you were doing at the Triangle and whatnot, does that directly play into that in any way? Or do you feel that to be successful, however you define successful on the stage at Tongue and Groove, with Tongue and Groove, it's more just totally allowing all of your senses to be present and connected with whatever information is coming out from the other people in the room?
I think both. Everyone in Tongue and Groove is trained actor with scripted stage experience, right? With, all the techniques that come in with training and performing on stage. So there is a certain level of show sense, a certain level of, just being a good actor, right? That's there. And the spontaneity relies on being present, being, taking in the energy of the space and at times letting go of the energy in the space. Cause there's always the NPR audiences. And that's just like the heady kind of thinking ones who are not necessarily vocal. They may like find something hilarious and be like, mm-hmm. Yeah.
The NPR audiences are
As I said that, I was like, and know your audience, Tanesha, Tina Brock.
Well, I would have to. I would have to agree with that. So that's interesting. So would you guys joke about that? As like, you could go backstage like, this is an NPR audience tonight.
Yes, and I will let you know. There's many improvisational theater group that has that response. Like, you can tell they're engaged, but they're just not. They're.
It's like not a Family Guy humor or does that partially the ha 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 ha, the very like laughed out loud, is that more closely tied to physicality or is
no, it could be. No. And I'll say this, especially with Tongue and Groove. Did you ever see Tongue and Groove before? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so it's like we're serial comic, right? So and I also suffer from like Black audience syndrome where I kind of have a higher expectations of call and responsiveness with audiences. Like oh, I want to hear a ha, because that was a ha moment. But
what do they call that? Aha moment.
Not a ha moment, Tina.
I know. I was going to do it, but the mic's right here, and I didn't want to like blow you out of the room. I just wondered if there was a term for that, like NPR audience. If like there's
that's a Tanesha term.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought because I'm a certain age. That happens.
Well, so in that sort of mix of emotion and long form thing that you're writing, do you ever find that are there certain players in the group that will inevitably take it down a dark road? Like, is that consistent or, so like, how in any given troupe there's, so I just wonder, are there people whose tool is really strong in that area and will make a U-turn sometimes down to a very different direction?
So we have a very strong show sense, right? And we don't steer away from like a serious or dramatic or even slightly traumatic moment. If that's what organically comes. but we also, there are some people who I'll say that I was not one to access the traumatic as easily as others. And then there's some folks who access the funny faster than others. And I think that's like intimated that that's a strength, fallback, whatever. But our show sense didn't allow for like two dramatic scenes back to back, right? So if I'm, and we don't know who's going on next, right? So you and Tina are doing a scene, and it's, someone died, right? And Bob's about to come on, or Bob's like, I haven't been on yet. All I know is I can't be dramatic. That's all I know. I'm coming on with an idea, but it can't be dramatic because we just had a dramatic scene.
Yeah.
So, like if in terms of planning, it's just like, or if we had two people sitting down at a couch or sitting, now the next scene needs to be a little bit more moving, and that's just show sense.
Mm-hmm.
That, and people are like, how do you rehearse improv? Like, I don't understand. How do you do that? And you rehearse getting used to those kinds of thinkings when you're waiting to come on stage, right? You rehearse like, all right, let's work on show sense this week. And always kind of doing every scene different, just to flex those muscles so you don't lay back in the cut. I just did that. So you don't lay back in the cut and then be like, oh, I didn't realize that there was a dramatic scene. It's just kind of sharpening your awareness so that you can be super present come showtime.
Do you think that being present is probably the key tool that you walk into the room with?
Yes, because when I'm on stage doing improv work and I'm not present, I fuck up every time. When I think about when I'm in the scene and I now start editing myself in the scene, or I stop listening to what you're offering me just in like whatever, because it's all yes and, right? I mean, that's like, but it really is. And if I'm lost into thinking like, oh my God, I should have done this, I should have done, and I'm not present with you in that moment. And that's like standard acting, right? Because the lines never change, but there's nuances in what happens in each moment that may change from night to night, right? Mm-hmm. You may have done that same scene 14 times, right? But it's different, a little different every time. And when you check out, you do the same thing over and over again. But when you're checked in, you're dancing, right? You and the other actor are having a tango, what's the French word for 2-person dance?
Tango.
No, it's like a pas de bourrée, but not. There's a pas
de deux?
Maybe pas de deux, but it's a dancing. We'll say tango.
We'll say tango.
Full stop.
But as you're talking, I'm thinking, but isn't that so true of anything in life? Like for all of our technique, and you need it, and you need in the back, all in your storehouse, your storehouse of tools. You need to have all those. I don't know where that came from.
I'm gonna leave that to be your world,
on the table.
And I support you, Tina.
Thank you, because. but I think in the end, right? Like the biggest mess in the world can happen. But it's a true mess, and it's a mess that's being created in the moment. And I feel somehow, as you were talking prior, I was thinking, so what happens when y'all get on stage and just by like chance, all of you are kind of stumped at the same time?
No.
And I'm guessing that probably just never happens because you've got too much brain power firing out there. But I often think about the information that you talk about, deep listening, and the information that comes in on all of your senses when you're playing in that groove, right? And really, there's so much being told between the language that y'all could sit there and read a book. You know what I mean?
We play with silence a lot.
Well, and it's a beautiful and prominent part of the work of Samuel Beckett, of a lot of the absurdists, is the ton of information that's coming through sensorially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you play with silence, how do you do it? Do you all just?
Well, so Carol Moog is our harmonist. She plays the harmonica-ist, whatever that word is. harmonicaist, whatever. But she's our soundtrack, right? So she just gives like kind of an undertone punch. But when we have our silent moments when, we're sitting on stage and we just choose to not and it's so weird. We never go out there because we usually come from opposite sides of the stage, right? So it's not like we like, oh, okay, be quiet, okay. It's just like, come on and then sit down. And then somehow, and this is part of like being really connected with each other, I'm going to be quiet. And the other one person's like, I think she's going to be quiet. So I'm going to be quiet. And so we're quiet. And then we can and then that informs us like, okay, am I angry? I think I'm angry. So now I'm turning a page angrily. I'm just, face just got pissed, and now the audience is like, oh, what's happening, and then the other person chooses to respond to that energy. They may look over at me to see what's going on. They may respond. So I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and they every once in a while see each other and have issues. So you may hear some barking.
How is that? Is that what's running through?
Yeah. And then that but we're nothing but the first maybe a minute and a half can be just filled with silence but communicating, and the audience loves it. Like you would think, and it's so hard for us as actors sometimes to be like, should we talk? Nope, don't talk, don't do it, and again, rehearsal, we play with silence so we can get comfortable being silent and communicating in silence. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. Or
yeah, you did. I mean, I'm really fascinated with this idea of which is not dissimilar to what happens on stage, but because you're creating all of it with pretty much not the frame of language that we generally come in with, right? I mean, it's not, the posts aren't quite there in the same way. I wonder how often you're responding to frustrations internally with yourself versus like a frustration or a response to a fellow actor on stage, or is it both? That you're just riding the wave of listening and riding that wave of emotion? Because so often I'm thinking when we sit in silence or we sit in meditate, wherever we're sitting, that it does pop up a lot of stuff in us, right? I mean, stuff comes bubbling up just as you're sitting there. And then it's like, oh, okay. That's got to be because I think in a show, not a regular show, but in a show where you have a character and you have a track and you're sort of not doing the same thing every night, but you're playing within that range. I think it could be so fascinating to be surprised by other people on stage when they're responding to inner and your fellow improvisers.
Well, I know we're talking about tongue and groove, but that just really kind of ignited in me a moment. My first semi-professional acting gig coming back from California, and Michelle Pauls directed voir dire at, I forget the name of the theater company, but it's in Trenton.
Passage?
Yes. I don't know if it was called Passage back then, but it's that same space. And we did voir dire, and I was working with Nancy Kutzer and some other folks who actually all ended up at some point, all separately, ended up in George's class in the Triangle Theater. Just found ourselves, we didn't get there together, but we were doing voir dire, and very loosely, it was people who were judging, who were jurors, and it was racially based. A mayor of DC bought some Coke, it's very, and I always said a line to the prejudiced white guy, played by Dennis Meltzer, and I always said, to him, "Fuck you." Whatever the line was, I can't remember, but it was because he was the guy. He was the antagonist to my character. Like, it was throughout the play, antagonist. And there was a woman who was married, who was dating a black guy, white woman dating a black guy, who was my ally, until she kind of betrays me in the end. But I always blamed the prejudiced white guy. Every night. I think it was a 3-week run. The last night of the show, I had a different reaction to the whole thing. And I turned to the ally and I said to her, "Fuck you." It was a totally different moment. And I turned to her, whatever it was I lying, fuck you. And I looked at it. She was not expecting it because every night I had been doing it to the thing. And she had a moment and she just started crying. And I started crying because I was just like, I felt so betrayed. Like he was like something I was expecting, right? Like you did what you were supposed to do because you're that guy, but you were supposed to be someone different. And then last night it was a very different feeling. So the question made me think of that, like, you know, of like that same thing, but it's being present, and whatever that silence, whatever that soup is that happens before the execution of your motivating line or whatever informs so much, and it can change. But if you're not listening, if you're not present, you can miss the
thing, the catalyst for it. Yeah.
James Tolbert is in the room. He was also in the Triangle. Fabulous actor.
So many questions here. I want you to help me with them. Tanesha, if you see somebody, over there. Yeah. Well, I have so many questions for you, and I want to make sure that we get through them.
Tiffany is asking, are you responding also to the energy you feel when you walk on stage? Speaking about silence. Energy you feel when you walk on stage. I try not to let, and I think this is true. I try not to let the audience inform my energy because just they'll never know what's going on out there. But, I want to say that I leave, work at work and home at home, but that's just not the case. So that energy that comes when I walk on the stage, I try for it to, I try not to let anything but the moment that I'm supposed to be having inform what I do. Like I can't, like if I just broke up with someone and I'm about to go do a funny thing happen on the way to the, I don't can't, that's not good luck. That'll get you fired. I don't know, Tiffany. John will say, mija. I have to think on that one. That's a good question, though.
Well, there's a certain, it feels like to me, there's a certain plays that we've worked on that have a lot of silence in them, or, we did Endgame over at the Triangle and, spent a great amount of time. Dennis actually, spent a great amount of time in trash cans and sort of meditating and the thing that you do when you're in a Beckett play. And it really does extraordinarily excavate an enormous amount of also the confinement of trash cans and what goes on in Endgame. So I think playing like you said, like the audience finds the silence really interesting. It's always super fascinating to me how much electricity and information is coming through a silence and how it opens the space up for the audience to enter to and try to really kind of figure out what's happening. So jumping from tongue and groove over to first person, and the work that you're doing as marketing communications director there, I guess I'm interested to know about all that you've done, performed, written, and how you can use that in service of helping other people to craft their stories. And you talk about the healing of that, and that's a particular place of interest for me, is like, how does telling your story, telling your story is telling your story, but I'm going to stop talking and let you in.
No.
I'm just like backing around on myself.
No. So I started with First Person Arts in October of 2017. We were in the final stages of an organizational transition, right? We were maybe 18. We were 18 years old at that point. And the First Person Arts, and for those of you all who don't know, let me back that up. First Person Arts is a nonprofit storytelling organization that that believes that everyone has a story to tell, and we provide an embracing environment in which you can tell that story, right? And so we do that in a sundry of ways through true personal narratives, but it can be done in a sundry ways, whether it's through our monthly story slams or our curated events. And our curated events are where people have work that's based, whether it's singing, dancing, literary, theatrical, or just, straight storytelling, like on our slams. We lift and edify like the true personal narrative. And in terms of like the healing process, because everyone, we have a new podcast called #us, Unique and Shared Experiences, because we believe that everyone has similar stories, right? And I like to say, a man who loses a child, we can relate to, right? You relate to loss, whether you've had a child or didn't have a child, but to hear a story about this man losing his child, we can be like, that must be traumatic. Oh my gosh. Oh my stars. Then this is a gay man who's lost his child, right? Now we can still relate to it, but now we are now open to hearing how his particular experiences may be slightly different. It's unique to him, but it's a shared experience, right? Now it's a gay man who's African-American in the South who lost his child. And so it's still a shared experience, but it's still unique. And it allows for us in sharing our stories and kind of peeling back that vulnerability. We create opportunities for people to have transformational experiences, right? Where we can go from this place of, oh yeah, I've lost before. And then to be like, oh, and to be open to like having a perception transformed through telling a story, with sharing a story, peeling back and being vulnerable with a story, full stop.
And do you think that's because in its, I guess in its best light, it is speaking directly, well, as you say, it's speaking directly to the vulnerabilities that we all have, which are universal. And it's sort of cutting through the happy talk or whatever the static is around the day-to-day sort of information that we take in and give out, particularly in a time like this when we aren't able to, when we're not having as much in-person contact as we were before. Although I would argue, and I would love to know your thoughts on how this virtual medium, how you all are using the virtual medium, and if you're finding that to be a useful and strong way of making those connections, because I think it can be.
It has been. It has been. It has. We're able to reach way more people, and we've loosened the barriers for people to going out and experiencing this have dropped. B, with our curated experiences, I mean, we're getting ready to have these capstone events starting on the 11th of February, where it's our curated portion of our season where we're doing workshops. So someone I think in the Emily Schilling, I think, asked about, editing their own experiences and some of their memoir work. We're doing workshops, create your own story, storytelling for business, and finding the funny, where you can, like, for people to help find the funny in their storytelling, to story slams, where we're working with Risk from New York and The Stoop in Baltimore and Rose Valley, also out in the Delco area. But we've been able to reach out to New York and Delco and all this kinds of stuff. And one of our coaches is in New York, and we're able to, we're getting audiences from California and Wisconsin who may have been in the storytelling space, but we're the only storytelling organization that really focuses on true personal narratives, because, we recognize the vulnerability that comes in. That's why we also work so closely with, like, the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disabilities in the city of Philadelphia, because we know that the work we do exposes a lot of that vulnerability, and some of the collaborations that we do with other organizations, Engaging Males of Color, Women's Way, we surface up some stuff, and we want to take care of our storytellers. And we want to, when you're creating a transformational experience, the goal is for you to be transformed, and transformation is not always easy, right? And so we don't want to have you like have this personal aha moment and then just be like left out there, like, now go and do something with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're as an organization, and Jamie J. Brunson, our executive director, is very laser focused on this, on making sure that kind of care that's why we call we're an embracing environment, because we're aggressively welcoming, making sure that you are given the opportunity to tell your story, and that if that story unleashes something, does create a transformation for you or for someone else, that we're there to help that, help put a button on it. Full stop. I could tell you, if you're more interested in, and I think Bob has been dropping some of these in the link, if you're interested in more about the capstone events, you can find it at firstpersonarts.org/anthology. And you can learn more about the workshops, about some of the performances and opportunities to engage with us. And I do believe that there is a bit of a discount for those of you who are listening today. Am I jumping the gun, Tina? Am I moving too fast?
Go for it. No, totally go for it.
Because the binding agent between Tina, Bob, and I is the Triangle Theater. The code that you want to use to get a 10% discount on the X-Files, where we all hear stories of anti-Valentines, is Triangle. So type that into the promo code Triangle, TRIANGLE, and you'll get 10% off of the X-Files, which is on the 13th. And it's virtual, so you don't have to leave the house.
And we'll also, we tape the show every week, and then we repost it on Facebook and whatever. We'll include all of that in the details as well for everybody. So I'm thinking, Tanesha, this I'd love to follow the idea of the virtual space, and whether on some level it does allow for more security than it might if you were in front of an audience of 100 people, and sort of the psychology of what for people that might be like,
So I think that is the case for the everyday storyteller, right? Because we open our monthly story slams to anyone. You can just sign up, put your name in the virtual bucket, go to our website, sign up to tell the story, and then we randomly select 5 names about 2 weeks before each event, and it's just anyone who has a story to tell. Let's do it. Bring it on. And that anonymity of being in your own house, in your own personal enclave, and not seeing all the faces or hearing the laughter or not laughter, can be like a safety net. It can be like, oh, I can do this. I'm just telling a story. For performers, right? For people who do the stage and who do this, and more in the curative spaces, they find it a little bit more challenging, because even though like I said earlier, I try not to let the audience inform me, but storytelling is so intimate. It's a one-to-one relationship that without the audience kind of giving you any feedback, whether it's a laughter or like a gasp or whatever, can be daunting. But they're champs. They rock on. So,
have you performed?
I have. I Bottom of the Barrel. No, that's not the one I did. Forbidden Fruit. I did.
How come you did do that monologue that I wrote for you that you performed at the Triangle many years ago? That I forgot I wrote until Bob reminded me.
The one where the mammogram, where one space dog gets squished.
Yeah, I could totally see why you wouldn't. That would not be first on your list.
Yeah, I won't say it's a family show because it's not, but it's also not a horror show either, and that's a bit of a horror.
Yeah, yeah. But you have performed.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you, I guess, do you miss it? I mean, I know you do. You're performing with tongue and groove and whatnot, but are there times where you think to yourself, gosh, is the balance right for you, is the question.
The first year, that we did a story slam, I did my first play since I've been back in Philadelphia during the Bridge Festival, and T.S. Hawkins play Dances with Ghosts. And T.S., if I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But it was a choreo poem and a choreo play. And so I was doing it simultaneously. I was rehearsing and getting ready. And it's like the first play I'd done in a minute, rehearsing and getting ready for that. And my first festival, getting things ready. We're implementing some new stuff. And after I got off the stage of the play, I did not have, I was like, right. And I came from, and then I ran over to the theater where we were putting up a thing, and I was doing my marketing thing, and I left there and I was hyped. It's like, okay, and I realized that I had somehow transitioned that high, and maybe it's just because it was my first play and I have to get it back in my blood again. But in that moment, I was like, the high that I got from being on stage, I think I'm getting it now from being a marketer.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I had to sit with that for a minute because I had so long identified as an actor. Like, what do you do? Well, I'm an actor, but I work at blah, 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 blah. And George used to make us, he was like, you guys need to stop not claiming it, just claim it. And it was through his tutelage that I learned to claim that I'm an actor. But when I realized that high was coming from the marketer place and not from the actor place, I really had a midlife crisis. I don't know what one want to call it, but I had a moment of like, no bueno. I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, but isn't that so great that in this cellularly combining your love of performance with the idea, when you were speaking about first person initially, what I kept thinking about people telling the stories and everybody has a story to tell, George's words were ringing in my ears that you have a story to tell, and it's an important story, and it's a unique story, and it's your story, and it's important. And I could hear that again. And so that makes sense to me that's in your DNA. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? To help other people do that and to know that you're supporting the richness of, as you say, transformation and of people like just telling their unique story and living that story. That I could see the crossover would be very powerful.
Yeah, I really, I had a late in life return to grad school and got my master's in arts administration when I left out of New York after doing the acting thing in New York for years, and I'm really, really happy. Right, like really, like truly, honestly happy with the kind of work we do at First Person Arts. Like, I always said I wanted a job that even on a bad day, it's a good day because I love my work. Right. And I mean, hand to God, that is what I'm experiencing at the First Person Arts organization. Right. Like it's even on the days when I want to shake the shit out of somebody. I love the work that I'm doing. It's you know what I mean? I'm sure it's not this. It can't be too different for you with IRC. Like on the days when people are not learning their lines or they're not in the rehearsal or that the rental fell through or whatever, you love the work that you're doing. So it kind of makes it all okay.
Yeah, I think there's enough in the cell there, enough different DNA in there that, and particularly when you are hearing, seeing the fruits of your labor. That's my mother's grandmother, my mother's grandfather clock going on right now, which means that I have that I am not paying attention because I'm so into what you're saying. But So we'll make sure, Tanesha, that and all that means is that we have a duty to let people have a real meal. And but I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I love this idea of rejuvenating some creative cavern where these things can happen. It sounds like you're in that creative cavern over at First Person, but I would love to see if that could happen. And for everybody who's wanting to check it all out, Emily, everybody who wants to check out more, we didn't get into the memoir part of it, but that's what's coming up at First Person Arts. So check it out. And Tanesha, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing here. And I hope that we can find a trampoline somewhere and
get to bouncing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so moted be.
I think so. These things happen for a reason. All right.
All right. Good
Thank
night.
you so much. Yeah.
Bob, love you.
And thanks to everybody for being with us. And I hope you'll be with us next Saturday at 5 p.m. Zave Smith is coming on. He's a photographer in Philadelphia and New York, and his work is philosophical and it's passionate and it's wonderful, engaging. We're going to be showing a lot of his work, talking through it, his growing up in the Midwest and how he really finds this very singular way of pulling out the energy of his close-up portraits of his subjects. So that's coming up next week, Saturday, February the 13th on Into the Absurd. So listen, happy Super Bowl to you all. Everybody keep your mask on. Have a great day tomorrow. I'm wishing you health and happiness and hope to see you at the table next Saturday at 5. Thanks for being around.